I stared at the note on our kitchen counter, my coffee growing cold beside me. James's handwriting was messy, rushed, like he couldn't wait to be done with our 15 years of marriage. The paper trembled slightly in my hands as I read it again. Emily, I'm done pretending. Living with a workaholic like you was torture. Sarah and I deserve this money more than you ever did. Don't try to find us. By the time you read this, we'll be gone. James. My name is Emily Chen, and at 42, I just discovered my husband had emptied our joint accounts and run off with his 26-year-old assistant. The irony wasn't lost on me. He called me the workaholic, yet he was the one who'd spent the last year working late with Sarah. I set down the note and pulled up our online banking app. Just as his letter promised, our accounts were drained. 15 years of shared savings, $2 million that we built together, gone in a single transaction. The corner of my mouth twitched up into a small smile. Poor James. He really thought he'd won. What he didn't know, what he'd never bothered to ask about during our marriage, was that I hadn't trusted him for years. As the CFO of one of Seattle's fastest-growing tech companies, I knew better than to keep all my assets in one place. Especially after I caught him Googling how to hide money from your spouse 3 years ago. I pulled out my phone and dialed Grace, my best friend and the only person who knew the full extent of my preparations. He finally did it, I said when she answered. The accounts? She asked, her voice sharp with concern. Cleared out, every penny. He left a charming note about how he and Sarah deserve it more than I do. Grace was quiet for a moment. How much did he actually get? $2 million from our joint accounts. He has no idea about the other $5 million I've got tucked away, or the fact that I've been documenting his affair for the last 8 months. Another pause. Please tell me you're going to destroy him. I walked to our home office, my home office now, and sat down at my desk, opening my laptop. Oh, I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to let him think he's won first. Let him and Sarah burn through that money, thinking they're living the high life. Then, when they least expect it. You're scary sometimes, you know that? Grace said, but I could hear the smile in her voice. I learned it from the best. The number of times I've watched you take down corrupt CEOs in court. You taught me patience. Grace laughed. Speaking of which, want me to get the paperwork started? Not yet. I said, pulling up my email. I want to see what they do first. Where they go, how they spend it. The PI I hired has been tracking them for weeks. They don't know it, but every transaction, every hotel stay, every fancy dinner, it's all being documented. I clicked through the latest surveillance photos. James and Sarah at the airport yesterday, him in his expensive suit, her hanging on his arm. They looked so pleased with themselves, so certain they'd pulled off the perfect escape. You know what the funny thing is? I continued, studying the images. If he just asked for a divorce like a normal person, I would have given him a fair settlement. But he had to play games, had to try to hurt me. Men like James don't know how to handle women with power, Grace said. It threatens them, makes them do stupid things. She wasn't wrong. Throughout our marriage, James had become increasingly resentful of my success. While I was being promoted, earning bonuses, and making smart investments, his real estate business had stagnated. He blamed the market, his competitors, even me, claiming my long hours made it impossible for him to focus on work. The truth was, he'd grown lazy, coasting on my income while putting minimal effort into his own career. Sarah, with her adoring eyes and constant praise, must have been a balm to his wounded ego. Their flight landed in Bali an hour ago, I said, checking the PI's latest report. First-class tickets, naturally. They've booked the presidential suite at the Four Seasons for a month. Seems they're planning quite the extended honeymoon with my money. Your joint money, Grace corrected. Money he had a legal right to, as much as it pains me to say it. But the hidden accounts are all in my name only, carefully documented as separate property. I know, Grace. I've been preparing for this day for 3 years, ever since I found those Google searches. I just didn't expect him to be so blatant about it. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The view from our penthouse apartment was spectacular, especially at sunset. Another asset James didn't know about, I bought this place 2 years ago through my LLC, letting him believe we were still renting. How long are you going to let them play their game? Grace asked. Long enough for them to get comfortable, to think they've gotten away with it. I want them to spend that money, Grace. every penny of it. Because when I finally do strike, I want them to have nothing left to fall back on. I heard Grace shuffling papers on her end of the line. Well, when you're ready, I've got a whole team of lawyers just waiting to rain hell on them. You know how much we love taking down entitled men who think they can steal from strong women. I smiled, thinking about the documentation I collected. The photos of James and Sarah at expensive restaurants, the video of them kissing in his office, the records of their hotel stays. All of it meticulously organized and dated. The evidence of their affair was just the beginning. I also had proof of James' attempts to hide assets, his business trips that were actually vacations with Sarah, even recordings of him bragging to his friends about how he was planning to leave me. I appreciate that, Grace. But for now, let's just watch and wait. I want to see how this plays out. After hanging up, I went through my normal morning routine. Shower, dress in one of my perfectly tailored suits, apply my makeup with precision. To anyone looking at me, it would seem like just another day. They wouldn't see the rage simmering beneath my calm exterior, the calculations running through my mind. As I was getting ready to leave for work, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Catherine. Just saw James's Facebook post. It read, "Are you okay?" I pulled up Facebook, curious about what he'd shared. There it was, a photo of him and Sarah on the beach in Bali, her diamond ring prominently displayed. The caption read, "Starting my new life with the love of my life." Sometimes you have to let go of your past to embrace your future. The comments were a mix of congratulations from people who didn't know he was married and confused questions from those who did. I noticed he'd blocked me, but hadn't counted on Catherine being able to see his posts. I texted her back, "I'm better than okay. Call you tonight. I have quite a story to tell you." Driving to work, I thought about the life James thought he was escaping. Yes, I worked long hours. Yes, I was focused on my career. But I had also loved him, supported him, believed in him when no one else would. I'd used my connections to help him build his real estate business, had encouraged him when deals fell through, had been there through every failure and setback. But it had never been enough. He wanted a wife who would dim her own light to make his shine brighter. Instead, he got me, ambitious, successful, unwilling to play small to soothe his ego. At the office, I threw myself into work, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for board meetings. My assistant, Michael, hovered anxiously by my door. "Mrs. Chen," he said carefully. I couldn't help but notice Mr. Chen's social media posts. "Should I update your contact information?" I looked up at him, appreciating his tactful approach. "Yes, Michael. And please cancel all his access to the building. If anyone asks, you can say we're separated and leave it at that." He nodded, relief evident on his face. "Of course. And I'm sorry. If there's anything you need." "Thank you, Michael. But I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." And I was. Despite the anger, despite the betrayal, I felt strangely liberated. No more pretending our marriage was working. No more walking on eggshells around James's fragile ego. No more compromising my success to make him feel better about his failures. That evening, I met Catherine for dinner at our favorite restaurant. My younger sister had always been the more cautious one, the one who played by the rules. As I told her everything, the affair, the stolen money, my secret preparations, her eyes grew wider and wider. "Emily," she breathed when I finished, "I can't believe he would do this. I mean, I never liked James, but this?" "Oh, it gets better," I said, pulling out my phone to show her the latest update from my PI. They'd already spent nearly $100,000. Shopping sprees, spa treatments, private tours. They're burning through that money like they think it's endless. Catherine shook her head. "And they have no idea you're watching?" "None. They think they're untouchable. James probably assumes I'm falling apart right now, devastated by his betrayal. He always did underestimate me. So what's your plan? When are you going to let them know you know?" I took a sip of my wine, considering. Not yet. This wasn't just about revenge, though that would certainly be sweet. This was about justice, about showing James and every other man like him that they couldn't just take what they wanted and walk away unscathed. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app, looking at the hidden accounts James knew nothing about. $5 million, carefully saved and invested over the years. Money I'd earned through bonuses, smart investments, and meticulous planning. Money that would ensure I could fight this battle as long as necessary. My phone buzzed with another update from the PI. More photos of James and Sarah, this time at a luxurious beachfront restaurant. They were laughing, touching glasses in a toast, probably celebrating their clever escape. I saved the photos to my evidence folder and set my phone aside. Let them celebrate. Let them think they've won. They had no idea what was coming. 3 months passed, and I watched through my PI's updates as James and Sarah lived their fantasy life. After Bali, they moved on to the Maldives, then to Monaco. Every day brought new charges, designer clothes, Michelin star restaurants, luxury hotels. They were spending the money exactly as I predicted they would, recklessly, arrogantly, believing their supply was endless. I sat in my office one morning reviewing the latest report. They just put a down payment on a villa in the south of France. The purchase price, 1.2 million euros. I smiled, doing the math in my head. Between their extravagant traveling and this new house, they burned through almost all of the stolen money. My phone buzzed. Grace calling. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. I pulled up my browser. What news? James' real estate company. It just filed for bankruptcy. Apparently, he hadn't been paying his employees or his vendors for months before he left. They're all filing lawsuits. I leaned back in my chair, a surge of satisfaction flowing through me. How many lawsuits? 7 so far, with more coming. His former assistant, not Sarah, the one before her, is claiming he owes her nearly $50,000 in unpaid wages. The contractors from his last development project are suing for over $300,000. Interesting, I said, my mind already racing ahead. And all these lawsuits will follow him. Everywhere. Grace finished, including to his new love nest in France. Emily, this is perfect timing. He spent most of your joint money, his business is collapsing, and he's about to be drowning in legal battles. Are you ready to make your move? I opened my email, where another report from the PI had just arrived. More photos of James and Sarah, but these were different. They weren't smiling anymore. James was on his phone, his face tight with stress. Sarah was sitting apart from him, her expression worried. "Yes," I said finally. "I think it's time. Send me the paperwork." Within an hour, Grace's team had everything ready. Divorce papers citing adultery and financial misconduct. Documentation of every penny James and Sarah had spent. Evidence of their affair going back months before they left. And my personal favorite, proof that James had been planning this theft for over a year, making him guilty of premeditated financial fraud. I signed everything and sent it back to Grace. How long until he's served? Given that he's in France, we'll have to go through international channels. But I've got contacts. He'll have the papers within 48 hours. I hung up and pulled up my banking app again, looking at my hidden accounts. Unlike James's dwindling funds, my money had grown over the past 3 months thanks to some strategic investments. I hadn't touched a penny of it, living instead on my substantial salary. My intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Chen." Michael's voice came through. "There's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Linda Carter. She's one of Mr. Chen's former clients." I recognized the name immediately. Linda had been trying to build a women's shelter, and James had been handling the real estate deal. Last I'd heard, it had fallen through. "Send her in." Linda walked into my office, looking nervous but determined. "Mrs. Chen, Emily, I'm sorry to bother you at work, but I didn't know where else to go. Your husband, James, he took our deposit for the shelter property. $500,000. The property was never actually for sale. It was all a scam. Those women, they were counting on us." I held up a hand, stopping her. "Linda, sit down. Tell me everything." Over the next hour, Linda laid out the whole story. James had convinced her organization that he had an inside track on a perfect property for their shelter. He'd taken their deposit, strung them along for months, then disappeared. The money that had been raised through years of fundraising, was gone. By the time she finished, I had already made my decision. "Linda, I want you to go back to your board. Tell them the shelter will be built. I'm going to make this right." Her eyes widened. "But how?" "The money." I smiled, thinking about my hidden accounts. Let's just say I have resources James doesn't know about. And I can't think of a better way to use some of it than to help women escape bad situations. After Linda left, I called Grace again. Add one more thing to the lawsuit. I want James's fraud against the women's shelter included. And Grace? I want it public. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of man James Chen is." "With pleasure," she replied. "The papers are being delivered tomorrow morning, French time. Want me to send you the video?" I laughed. "There's going to be video?" "Of course there is. I hired the most expensive process server in France. Trust me, you're going to want to see this." The next morning, I woke up early, knowing the papers would be delivered to James's villa around 9 a.m. French time. I made my coffee and settled in front of my laptop, where Grace had sent me a link to a live feed. Right on schedule, a well-dressed Frenchman approached the villa's front door. Through the camera, I could see James answer, still in his robe, looking annoyed at the early disturbance. "Monsieur Chen?" the server said formally. "I have documents for you from the United States." I watched James's face change as he realized what was happening. His smug confidence melted into shock, then anger, then fear as he flipped through the papers. Behind him, Sarah appeared, wrapping her designer robe around herself. "What is it?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. It's Emily," James stammered. "She's suing me. She knows everything." The process server cleared his throat. "Monsieur, there are also several other lawsuits included. Your former employees, vendors, and clients have all filed claims against you in the United States." James's face went pale. "What? No, that's impossible." I closed the business. "The claims predate your departure, monsieur. And as these are international financial crimes, they will be pursued here in France as well as in America." I watched Sarah's expression change as she realized what this meant. Their perfect escape, their new life in France, it was all about to come crashing down. "James," she said, her voice shrill. "What's going on?" "What does he mean, international crimes?" But James wasn't listening. He was still staring at the papers, particularly the page detailing my hidden assets. The blood had drained from his face as he realized just how badly he'd miscalculated. The process server gave a small bow. "Bonne journée," he said politely, then turned and walked away, leaving James and Sarah standing in their doorway, their perfect world beginning to crumble. I closed my laptop, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the real battle. Over the next few weeks, James tried everything. He hired expensive lawyers, tried to hide his remaining assets, even attempted to claim that I had tricked him somehow. But Grace's team was ready for all of it. The evidence was overwhelming. Every photo, every receipt, every record of their affair and their subsequent spending spree. It all painted a clear picture of premeditated theft and fraud. The lawsuits from his former employees and clients only made things worse, revealing a pattern of financial misconduct that stretched back years. Sarah, proving that she was exactly who I thought she was, left him as soon as the money started running out. She took what she could: designer clothes, jewelry, the few remaining luxury items they had, and disappeared back to the States, leaving James alone in their overpriced villa with a stack of legal papers and mounting debts. One evening, about 2 months after serving the papers, I received an email from James. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the better of me. "Emily," it read, "I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But please, these lawsuits will destroy me. The police are investigating the shelter fraud. I could go to jail. Can't we work something out? For old time's sake?" I thought about Linda and the women who had counted on that shelter. I thought about James's employees who had gone unpaid, the vendors he had cheated, the lives he had carelessly damaged in his selfish pursuit of pleasure. My response was brief. "You're right, James. You could go to jail. And that's exactly where you belong." I clicked send and then opened my banking app. The transfer to Linda's organization had just gone through, enough money to buy an even better property for the shelter and fund its operations for the first year. Sometimes karma needed a little help, and I was happy to provide it. Grace called later that night with an update. "The French authorities are cooperating fully," she said. "They've frozen the villa and all his remaining assets. He's being extradited back to the States next week to face charges. And the money he stole from me, what's left of it will be recovered. But honestly, Emily, after his debts and legal fees, there won't be much. The good news is, with your hidden accounts, you don't need it." I smiled, looking out at the Seattle skyline from my penthouse window. "No, I don't. But this was never about the money, Grace. It was about justice." "Well, you got it. James Chen is finished. His reputation is ruined. His business is destroyed, and he's facing serious jail time. And you're stronger than ever." She was right. In trying to destroy me, James had only made me stronger. His betrayal had forced me to be more independent, more careful, more strategic. And in the end, those very qualities had been his undoing. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching as James pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud. The judge was not sympathetic to his claims of remorse, particularly when the women's shelter fraud came to light. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all his victims. Sarah watched from the back of the courtroom, probably realizing that she had backed the wrong horse. She caught my eye as she slipped out during the sentencing, her designer clothes now looking somewhat shabby, her confident smile replaced by a worried frown. After the hearing, Linda approached me with tears in her eyes. "The shelter opens next month," she said. "We're naming it the Phoenix House, because it rose from the ashes of what James did. Would you consider being on our board?" I hugged her, touched by the offer. "I'd be honored." That evening, I hosted a small dinner party in my penthouse. Grace was there, along with Catherine and a few close friends who had supported me through everything. As we toasted to new beginnings, I felt truly at peace for the first time in years. "You know what the best revenge is?" Grace asked, raising her glass. "Living well. And you, my friend, have mastered that art." I smiled, thinking about everything that had happened. James had thought he was punishing me by leaving, had thought he could break me by stealing what we had built together. Instead, he had freed me to be stronger, smarter, and more successful than ever. As I looked around at the smiling faces of my true friends and family, I realized that I had lost nothing that mattered and gained everything that did. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. The next morning, I received a letter from James's prison. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope, but this time, there was no urge to read what he had to say. I dropped the unopened letter in the shredder and headed to work, ready to face whatever challenges the day might bring. After all, I had proven that I could handle anything life threw at me, and I had done it not by being bitter or cruel, but by being smart, prepared, and ultimately true to myself. That, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all.